Hello and welcome to your in-depth weekly horoscope for week commencing the 12th of December. This is for the Sun or the Ascendant. I'm going to give you some standout strands to look out for, which we can all relate to collectively, but please stay with me. I will then dive deep to give you in much greater detail each of the 12 zodiac signs. Now, as this week begins, a truly notable event. Mercury recently moved into the rather business-like sign of Capricorn, enters its shadow period. This is the period before the retrograde begins, which is on the 29th of December. It comes out of that on the 18th of January. But if we are dealing with anything that is more to do with those worldly affairs, it is going to be important to really manage the detail. But despite this, later this week, Mercury does forge a sparkling alliance with Uranus. And it's suggesting, this combination, that if we can think of new and fresh ways to approach our worldly interactions, even at this late stage of the year, perhaps the shadow period and then the retrograde is asking us to rethink or flex in new ways, which can actually be really valuable to us. Now, also, right at the start of the week, Venus and Jupiter, the two planets of fortune, are just in a square. This runs over from the previous week. It could give us an opportunity to be very generous to someone. Maybe we can get together with people that we have a kinship with, particularly actually through those worldly interactions with Venus in the 10th house. But this is a week when the Sun does square up with Neptune. If you remember, this began on the last day of last week. The Sun in the sign of Sagittarius is very much about discovery, adventure, independence, travel, higher knowledge, philosophies, and even education. Can be around the rule of law. Neptune, of course, is very much to do with dreams. It's a very mystical influence, and at its best can have quite a magical impact. But I think this particular influence can see us amplify or exaggerate our senses, even if they're not conscious. So if something just puts us in a bit of a spin, there could be a tendency to buy into it a little bit too much. Ironically, Jupiter, the other ruling planet of Pisces, along with Neptune, is in a sensational link with Pluto for the whole of this week. If there is something that you've been working on in a physical way for a long time that has required a great deal of patience, it could be your links with someone that have been developing, perhaps not so much at a tangible level, more an instinctive level. There could be someone that your association with can actually end up being very fortunate indeed. And from Monday through to Thursday, the Sun's in a very constructive link with Saturn. This can offset some of the distortion the Sun's right angle with Neptune can create. And remember, with that Mercury shadow period, managing details is important. So what Saturn is doing with the Sun here is asking us to be a bit more detached, because it's in the sign of Aquarius, which is airy, to think through our ideas for expansion, but research them in a very thorough and step-by-step way. And that can push back some of the dissipating energy of Neptune square to the Sun, which can drain a little bit of vitality from proceedings. Now, on Saturday, there is a quarter moon in the precise sign of Virgo. This is just saying to us, if we do feel that we want to help out or volunteer or assist people in some kind of ways, that's very laudable. We just need to make sure in the following week that we're not promising to do something that actually becomes a bit of a bind to deliver on, perhaps around those festive arrangements. But right at the end of this week, it's the Sun that comes into Jupiter, into a square with Jupiter, replacing Venus. And this is an aspect really that can actually have a very generous side to it. If we can find ways to embrace the more traditional festive strands of looking out for those who are less fortunate, of just small but important gifts, these type of things actually could really have quite an impact on the recipient. But it's also saying to us not to get too caught up in trying to be too much of a people pleaser, I think, around our budget if we are facing some financial realities which are tricky. I think we need to stick with what we feel really comfortable with. But there could be some kind of discussion at the end of this week where you find yourself talking about something where you have a very different worldview from the person that you're discussing this issue with, but actually you can gain or learn something from what could even be a disagreement if you're open to the possibility. Now, we're nearly in 2023. What will the year hold for you as an individual? You can gain a lot from the zodiac forecasting for sure, but it's your personal astrology which is really crucial. If you give me your time, date and place of birth, I can give you your forecast for the coming year. And this will give you searing insights as to when planetary influences are impacting on your natal chart. But also my special package of 30% off. You can get your life roadmap, character analysis report. Please see the link below. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining me. I'd love you to subscribe. If you're an ongoing follower, thank you so much for joining me once more. Now, here is your in-depth forecast for each sign. So Libra, your week commencing the 12th of December forecast sees Mercury, the planet of communication, of talk and thought, go into its pre-retrograde shadow on Monday. But I want to assure you that later this week, Mercury forges a very productive link to Uranus, the planet of innovation, of surprises, of course of truth and disruption. And Uranus for you is in the part of your horoscope to do with deep transformations. But this could trigger, this link, some information, a thought process, a conversation around your property or home situation, which can be quite illuminating. So look out for that. Now, over the last few years, Pluto, since 2008, has had such a massive impact on your situation. And of course, it depends where your sun, your ascendant, your sun, moon at midpoint is in Libra, how recent that intensity has been. But the other thing that's coexisted with the Pluto influence has been the Neptunian one since 2012 in your 6th house. And it's Neptune that plays such a huge role this week, to be honest, Libra, because the sun's still in the buzzy 3rd house. And it does actually forge an awkward quarter moon, being truthful, on Saturday, which could see some bickering or two-faced stuff going around, to be honest. I wouldn't be too open with personal information or opening up to someone you're not quite sure of towards the end of this week. But I think the key with Neptune is it's in your sector of devotion and sacrifice and service to others, but also your physical health. So if you have gone through periods of feeling quite drained over those years since 2012, wouldn't be a surprise. And part of the reason is I feel that you've felt quite leveraged to support other people, whether it's family members or colleagues. And this is a week because the sun is compromised by Neptune when your energy could be quite vulnerable to trying to do too much to please others. Even getting caught up in communication. We all experience so much stimuli these days from different social media and all the rest of it. And even that stuff can actually be quite draining for you. However, in a much more productive way, the Sun and Saturn, yes, Saturn's got a bit of a bad rep, but actually it could reward you for all your hard work if you've been putting a lot of effort into your creative talents over the last couple of years, or you've really worked hard at understanding a romance much more, or the needs of your children, there could be a really constructive conversation this week, but one where someone, could guilt you out a little bit about, well, can you cover for me on this shift, or can you do this, or can you do that? And I think it's important to remember the boundaries, the lessons you've learnt about boundaries over the last few years, because by the end of this week, it's the Sun that's linking to Jupiter, and Jupiter in the same location as Neptune, and this one is much easier, to be honest, to get caught out in, trying to be a good egg, and I think it's important that it's our estimation of our self-worth, who we are, that really should validate us. And that's really difficult for Libran people, because you're so good at reflecting how other people are feeling and leaning into their situations. But I wouldn't get caught up in other people's needs too much this week. I think that part of you that likes to help, likes to be a service, it's all good, but just be aware that your energy is finite in this particular week, and concentrate on what's really important to you, the conversations that really can see something shaping up, which gives you a sense of progression. That's what's key for your progress this week.